Deion Sanders and Colorado just lost a ton of transfers, but there's one that stands out, and this one may be the biggest of Coach Prime's career.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borber. Today's episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Let's dive right in. Alton McCaskill gone before we even saw him healthy, and his father appears to disagree with that. But if you guys didn't know, Colorado has lost a lot of portal players over the past couple of days of Cormani McLean, Kari Mans, Dave Harris, Vito Tisdale, Miles Slusher, Savion Washington, all these guys. And it's like, you know what? Most of them happens. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit. But losing Alton McCaskill before we ever got to see him healthy, brutal loss. This running back room was already shallow as it was with him. He hasn't played a meaningful game of football since 2021. If you look at his stats, and I'm not trying to shoot him down by any means, but he was not, according to him at least, or according to Coach Prime and the staff, he was not ready to play last year. So last year we saw him for a total of 14 carries for 59 yards. The previous time he played before that was 2021. He had 961 yards rushing, 16 touchdowns, and he also added 21 catches. So he is obviously one of the best running backs in college football. He won the American Athletic Conference Rookie of the Year award in 2021. He was that guy. He was going to be the guy that changed the offense for Colorado. And obviously now that he's gone, they need to get more running backs. And I'll talk about that later in the third segment. They are going to get more running backs. They have a couple guys they're in the mix for. But losing Alton McCaskill is a big loss. You know, I think it really comes down to they didn't do enough to kind of ensure that he was happy, I guess you could say, because, and I'm going to read you guys what his father said. And whether you guys want to admit it or not, whatever our people around us say about us is mostly stuff that they've been hearing from us. A good example, Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. After, I think it was a Super Bowl loss, all of a sudden it was his brother or his girlfriend or family members, whoever it was, they were posting cryptic posts on his behalf. And it's like, okay, that's odd. It's like, who cares though? It's his brother or it's his girlfriend or wife, whatever she is to him. And it's like, well, if you think about it, they're not pulling this out of their, you know what, they're not pulling this out of a magician's hat. These are things that have been said. And so when I see this, there's a few things that stand out to me and I'll break them down for you. So this is in a deleted tweet from his father, Alton McCaskill. The fourth said, if my son's not RB1, we got to go. So initially the thing that stands out to me is Alton McCaskill wasn't going to start. So that means that I think Michael Welch is probably the clubhouse leader. Everyone's been raving about him. Coach Prime raved about him today while talking to the media. He said everything when asked when Michael Welch has shown, he said everything. The kid has a low sense of gravity. He studies his butt off. The kid is phenomenal. I'm happy he was an early enrollee. This kid brings a lot to the table. He does not play. And then he said it runs like a lot like Savion Wilkerson, who still in the fray for now. For whatever reason, they don't always use him. It is what it is. So then let's dive into the rest of Alton McCaskill's father's post. He was ready last year. He's 100% this year. Unfortunately, I have to find another home where there's no favoritism and he is valued, appreciated, and has no doubts about RB1. He is the best running back in Colorado, but he's not settling. We going. Thank you, Colorado, for your hospitality. So he says, unfortunately, we have to find another home where there's no favoritism. That's interesting because I think this is something that Colorado's run into a little bit. And I think a few people have said this, is that the staff will latch on to certain players and those players will play no matter what. One of them being Trevor Woods. I know a lot of you disagree with Trevor Woods playing, but he's really good. Even though you guys hate him, Trevor Woods is really good. And there's a reason that they have always trying to find a role for him. Jimmy Horn Jr., there's a reason that they always trying to find a role for him. There's a reason that whenever he was struggling, he was still getting on the field. It's not to say that he's not one of their best players, because he is, but a lot of people, specifically in Colorado and disgruntled players who have left the program, have said that there's been favoritism issues. And then it says they want to go to a place where there's no doubts that he's running back one. So basically what I'm hearing is that Alton McCaskill was not getting starters reps, and he was not viewed as a starter. And even though he likely would have been the starter or would have gotten a ton of carries, that's not enough for them. So they left. Alton McCaskill will command quite the market again. He was one of the top players in the portal last time. If I remember correctly, he was the top running back transfer. Let me see before I make that guarantee. I feel like he was, though. I remember him being one of the most highly sought after players in the portal. Well, I guess we can't see now. Last year's rankings, but he was highly coveted. I think it's a big loss for Colorado in terms of their running back room now. They have Michael Welch, who's a freshman, which, I mean, he's impressed by all standards and all metrics. Still a freshman. Dylan Edwards, who's going to play a lot more receiver, which means that Dylan Edwards is probably going to not be the every down back. And then they have Stevion Wilkerson, who the staff just does not trust enough, I guess you could say. He just doesn't get carries a lot, and I don't know what it is. I don't know the reasoning for this, but they just don't put Stevion Wilkerson in a lot of situations. He usually is a red zone back, or at least he was last season. Obviously, I know he played well at Jackson State, and his previous stop, I think it was at Delaware State, but they didn't play him a lot last year. It is what it is. I'm not the one that picks who plays. So they need to get at least 2 more running backs in the portal. Obviously, they've lost a lot of players in the portal. So the more people you lose, the more you can bring in. And I'm going to talk about the guys that they're in the mix for later. So you guys stay tuned to that, because we're going to discuss. But first, I need you guys to know that Alton McCaskill, big loss, really disappointed we didn't get to see him unleashed. I feel like we kind of, in a way, we missed out on seeing what could have been. I think he could have really changed the dynamic of this offense. It's not to say that none of these other guys can't, but I really was excited to see what he could do. When we come back, I'm going to talk about why everyone in college football is harping on this narrative that Coach Prime is losing players. And while he is losing players, they're missing the point, and it's the wrong narrative. But first, a word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked on Buffs could not be possible without the help of sponsors like Yahoo Finance. Wouldn't it be great to see all of your investment and retirement accounts in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. Let's get straight to the point. You want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising cost of inflation, to pay off your debt or your mortgage. Pretty much anything standing in the way of you and financial freedom, right? Well, with Yahoo Finance, you get access to the news, data, and tools that you need in order to help reach that financial freedom. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for the extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They're the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. With a community of over 90 million users each month, the real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. They're the #1 financial destination. That's yahoofinance.com. Again, that's yahoofinance.com. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you darn get your podcasts. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in, commenting, liking, subscribing, all that jazz, interacting with the podcast. It's amazing. Love all the support you guys give me. We're at 5,000 subscribers. Let's get to 6 soon. Let's get to 10 soon. I want to see that number continue to climb. Let's talk about the narrative. It's been all over social media, and it's really quite bizarre because... And I know this. I know why this narrative is happening. One, if you look at all of the, which I need to pull it up, so apologies. If you look at all the guys that Colorado has lost in the transfer portal, they have lost, I think it's around 12 guys now, 14 guys total. And realistically, they're currently listed as having 30 outgoing transfers, which is a little bit of an exaggeration because there's still guys from the fall that didn't or that haven't found a home yet. But everyone is saying, oh, Colorado lost all of these players. Everything's going to you-know-what in Boulder. What is Coach Prime doing? It is a disaster in Boulder. And it's like, okay, these are the same guys that, one, you guys said sucked last year. All these guys that Coach Prime brought in last year, and you're like, they're not good. Why does it matter? Now they're leaving. They're still not. They still didn't produce, but now it's different because it's like, oh, they're leaving Coach Prime, so it's a bad thing. There's 2 points that I need to make here. One, realistically, when I look at the guys that they've lost, none of these guys contributed to anything. Tavares Dawson and Savion Washington and Jaden Milner-Jones were the 3 most productive transfers. Not a single one of them was starting. Outside of Savion, actually, I take that back. Savion Washington was starting, but he was a part of that horrendous offensive line. Tavares Dawson was out of the rotation. I think it was like week 5. Jaden Milner-Jones had some good moments. I won't lie to you. But again, they brought in a ton of experience. They brought in Preston Hodge. They brought in DJ McKinney. He started 1 game, played in all 12. So he was a contributor. But the rest of these guys, like, I'll run through the list. Like, let's just go through it. Alton McCaskill didn't play any meaningful snaps. I think he saw a bunch of garbage time. Demoy Kennedy didn't really do anything for Colorado last season. Let me just pull up their production last season, because I think a lot of people are really misconstruing what they've lost. It's not to say that these guys aren't going to be good players. It's not to say that these guys weren't good players when they got to Colorado. They just did not do anything for Colorado. Demoy Kennedy, he's a junior. He spent 2 years at Alabama and then 1 year at Colorado. In his 1 year at Colorado, he had 13 total tackles. That was it. He played in 4 games, with the last game being his most productive. Alton McCaskill, he played in, I think it was 4 games as well, or 5 games, something along those lines. He had 14 carries for 59 yards across 4 games. Shamal Mateer, tight end, tough loss because he would have been a really good contributor to this offense. He was only there for 11 practices, or 10 practices, excuse me. Vito Tisdale, the Kentucky transfer. Let's see. Let me pull it up. He had 11 total. No, he actually did not record a stat last year for Colorado. So, I mean, tough. Kari Mans had a handful of tackles. It was not anything special. Outside linebacker, Kari Mans. Let's see. Kari Mans. There we go. He had a total of, drumroll please, 9 total tackles. Cormani McLean, he started a few games, had a 51 coverage grade, was not really ready to contribute to a Power 5 program. Jacob Page, don't think he played at all. I don't even know if he was on scholarship. I hadn't really heard much about this guy whatsoever. Tavares Dawson, like I said, he was someone who obviously contributed for a little bit and then left. Zach Blackwood, they didn't get much from him. David Connor didn't play. Isaiah Jota the offense lineman had a couple moments, I guess. Dave Harris didn't really play. The list goes on and on. They lost a lot of guys who were second at best, third, fourth, probably not even on the depth chart guys. And so now everyone's like, Colorado's losing all these players. Oh my gosh, what is Coach Prime doing? It's a disaster. No, it's not a disaster. If anything, it helps Colorado out more. That's the brutal truth. Coach Prime needs more talent on this roster. These guys were taking up spots and were not contributing. It's a harsh reality. Wouldn't be surprised if some of these guys were urged to leave. I would not be surprised. But you look at all of these guys that Coach Prime brought in last year of his number 1 portal class. This is where I think if you're going to criticize Coach Prime in Colorado, this is where the criticism should come into play. The evaluations for their first portal class were horrendous. They brought in a bunch of guys who hadn't proven anything and were just taking in anyone that wanted to come to Colorado. And that's obviously the problem they're running into now is none of those guys panned out. Not none, but majority of those guys did not pan out. You look at all the players they lost in this portal class, and even from last year's portal class or the last portal window that were a part of that first class, those guys did not pan out. There was poor evaluation. There was sort of anyone wants to come on over sort of vibe. And now they are being publicly scrutinized for losing all of this talent when in reality, they're losing guys that probably are all going to end up at group of 5 programs or FCS programs. But because they misevaluated, it looks worse on them. Now, in my next segment, I'm going to talk about they have some big portal needs, and they're going to get some big portal home runs. They are in the mix for a lot of interesting guys. But again, it goes without saying, or does not need to go without saying, excuse me, they missed on their portal class last year. I would say most of the guys in that portal class last year were misses. Obviously, there's Shador, there's Travis, there's Jimmy, Xavier Weaver. There's quite a few hits. There's a handful of hits, but there's a lot more misses than there are hits. So if you're looking at this and you're like, this is what Coach Prime does, he brings in all these guys from the portal. It works out. Does it? Does it work out? Because let's look at the guys that they brought in. And I apologize. Jacob Page was a part of the recruiting class. That was an oversight on my part. 3-star recruit out of Tennessee. Apologize there. He didn't have a catch, though. Didn't play. Jawan Mitchell was publicly shown on the Amazon Prime documentary getting screamed at for taking phone calls right before the game. Not great. Then Sivion Wilkerson, I would say he's a reserve running back. Okay. Kari Mans didn't do much. Shiloh Sanders, he was a hit. Success. Alton McCaskill, miss. Didn't play that well. Javon Antonio, didn't do much. Travis J, he's still on the team, but he didn't do much. Arden Walker, don't think he did that much. Let me confirm. Arden Walker. Because a lot of these guys, and it's not to say that these guys are bad players. They just did not hit. 12 total tackles. No. JJ Hawkins hasn't done anything. Reggie Young, offensive lineman from Liberty, miss. Bishop Thomas, big miss. Roderick Ward, he was solid. Jalen Ellis, didn't really play. Savell Small, switch positions, technically a miss. Tavares Dawson, not with the program, miss. Amarion Cooper, he'll be a contributor and our starter. That's a hit. Jaquez Robinson, Alabama, miss. David Connor, miss. Amari McNeil, he'll probably be a starter or at least a good key contributor this year. He's a hit. Chaz Wallace, miss. Brandon Gant hasn't done much, so borderline miss. We'll see. Derek McClendon, I think he was a good get. But with that being said, his stats were not anything impressive by any means. He had 12 solo tackles, 17 total tackles, and 1.5 sacks, but he still contributed. So is what it is. Vito Tisdale, miss. Willie Gaines, miss. Dave Harris, miss. Jack Bailey, part of that offense line, miss. Xavier Weaver, he was great. Demoy Kennedy, miss. Kendrick Breedlove, miss. Jordan Dominic, really good. Liked him. They didn't keep Taylor Upshaw, so miss. Cavassier Smoke, miss. Miles Slusher, injury. We'll scratch that. Yusuf Mugarabil, interior offense lineman, Florida, didn't stay with the team, miss. Tavion Beasley, miss. Leonard Payne, didn't really do much. Jeremiah Brown, Mark Vassett, punter, really good. Alejandro Mata, really good. Seydou Traore, tight end, miss. Didn't stay with the team. Jimmy Horn and Cameron Summer Craig, both hits. Travis Hunter hit. Tyler Brown hasn't really played yet. We can't know. Shador Sanders, obviously a hit. Landon Beebe, miss. Shane Cokes, hit. Savion Washington was contributed. He contributed. Vontae Bentley and Taj Austin both contributed. These guys, though, you look at that class. I just went through every single player in that portal class, which was 51 total transfers. There were a lot more misses than there were hits. So the evaluation process for Colorado last season, disastrous. And I think they need to really come to figure out what works for them and what doesn't. And I think we'll find out this year if it works, because obviously they are going to have not 50 people, but they're probably going to have around 30 to 35 transfers. So are they evaluating players at a high level? Otherwise, Coach Prime's going to need to get different talent evaluators around him. When we come back, I'm going to be talking about the guys that they're in the mix for and the transfers that they absolutely need to land following these departures. But first, a word from our sponsors over at Monopoly Go. I've been told I'm a competitive person, and that's okay. Well, I do have a competitive side. We all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I could charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like the classic Monopoly. But now I can also heist their vault of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game, join your friends, download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in to every single one of my podcasts, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. It's and I appreciate all the support you guys give me. We're talking about the transfer portal. Obviously, Colorado is in the mix for a lot of guys, and they need a lot of talent. They do. If they really want to contend, they genuinely need to contend in the portal. They need to sort of make some noise, if you will. So let's dive into where they are in the portal, who they got coming to town, or players are after. Wide receiver Keandre Lambert Smith. I talked about him a couple days ago. Don't know if they really need a wide receiver, but it's the rich getting richer at wide receiver at least. And he is one of the more productive wide receivers in the portal. 53 catches, 673 yards last season. He was quite the contributor for Penn State. Then SMU offense lineman Branson Hickman. Colorado is pushing to get him on campus for a visit. They're trying to bolster that offensive line. Can't blame them. Let's see. Who else do I have on my list? I talked about him, I think 2 days ago or whatever. 2 days ago. Yeah, for sure. Nakai Hill-Green, Charlotte linebacker, started his career at Michigan. He is going to be someone that they push for heavily. And Colorado wants to get him on campus for a visit. Then they're also hosting Tennessee transfer. Let me confirm. Yeah, they're hosting the Tennessee linebacker transfer. And this is a big one because obviously they need linebacker help all they could get. They do badly. It's one of those things where they don't have a lot of guys at that position. Elijah Herring, he was someone who's played and I would say contributed quite well for the Volunteers. He had 32 solo tackles, 79 total tackles last season. Played in just about every game for the Volunteers. And then running backs wise, they are after a guy by the name of Penny Boone, who is from Toledo. I think he's one of the most sought after running backs in the portal. And he has every sort of school coming after him. I'm pulling up his stats right now. Penny Boone, here we go. He had 194 carries for 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns last season. Get him the hell on campus, Colorado. Get him the hell in the backfield, and he's automatically your RB1 probably. Comes in at 6'1", 242 pounds. He's a big dude. Then they also have Dallin Hayden, who's another running back who I think that could start for them right away if they get him. 5'10", 205. His freshman year at Ohio State, 111 carries, 553 yards, 5 scores. So the needs for Colorado have changed quite a bit. I think they need a corner to add more depth. I think losing Cormani, I don't think he was going to start. I talked about him possibly being a breakout player, but eventually later in the season. I always said DJ McKinney was going to be the starter opposite of Travis Hunter. So they need a corner for depth. They need a tight end. That tight end room is despicable. I look at, you got Savell Smalls, okay? Didn't pan out as a pass rusher. Okay, he played a little tight end in high school, not a lot. I think he's someone that could break out, but realistically, I don't know if I trust a guy in his first year being a breakout tight end. They got the tight end from Ohio State. I believe his name is Sam Hart. He hasn't played. He has no catches to his name, which is fine because obviously they had Stover. So they had a lot of depth in front of him, but he's a junior with no stats. And then, yeah, the tight end room. They need running backs. They need tight ends. They need a corner. They need linebackers. Realistically, those are the 4 positions that I think they should just bring in a lot of depth at. Another offense lineman or 2, right tackle or 2, wouldn't hurt. This Colorado team needs a lot more playing experience than they have right now. They need a lot more depth. They're going to get it. I think Coach Ryan's going to have a huge, huge portal. I think it's going to far outweigh the departures, but obviously all the departures are happening right now, so it's blown out of proportion. But like I said earlier, they're not losing guys that were contributing. Now, does that go back to their evaluations? Yes. But if you want a silver lining, none of the guys they lost were key contributors. There was probably 1 or 2 of them that were, I would say none of them. Majority of the guys that they're losing were not key contributors. They are not losing a ton of talent, at least for them, that played a lot last season. And I'm interested to see where a lot of those guys end up. They have a lot of portal needs. I do think they're going to hit on them, but it's going to be a crazy next few days. Obviously, the portal window closes in 12 days. I think it's on the 30th or the last day of April, whatever it may be. But yes, it's going to be a hectic portal. I'm going to keep you guys covered every step of the way. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day. Make me your first listen of the day. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow. Make sure to comment. Let's duke it out in the comments. I'm sure you guys are going to have something to say, but I love it always. Hope to see you guys tomorrow.